Making a connection with your subject when you're doing a portrait is pretty key. I photographed Michael Phelps initially at Athens Games in 2004, and he was pretty young. I photographed him in Beijing with his 8 gold medals. It was a set-up shoot, it was a portrait shoot, but it was difficult getting those 8 gold medals all to face out. Photographing any Sports Illustrated cover, the photographs themselves, not necessarily the best images that you've taken that day, to be honest with you. But what is very difficult about those covers, and particularly when you get more than one subject in your frame, you end up dealing with a lot of logistics. I got to shoot the cover in Rio of Katie Ledecky, Michael Phelps, and Simone Biles. Simone Biles was competing and she had to take a drug test, which took about 3 or 4 hours for her to show up. So she was the last one to show up. Katie Ledecky was the first, and she waited. And I can't tell you how rare that is for a superstar athlete to wait. So it's difficult to keep the athletes focused on you. You only get a few frames where it actually works for a cover. The shoot seems to go pretty well. I hand the cards to Eric Rasko and I watch as he's downloading them, and then there's nothing. There's no images on that card. You know, your heart drops. And so this was something that we were never going to get these 3 athletes back together again, and we were also trying to rush off to the 100 meters. So there was this sort of like cloud of despair as we raced off to the stadium. And it wasn't till about half an hour before the race that we got the, they'd recovered the images back in the office, and things were going to go well.
Wait till my count, okay? On 3, big smile though. Ready? 1, 2, 3, let's do it.
Who's not in awe of Michael Phelps? Katie Ledecky is an emerging superstar, obviously, but you could tell she was in awe of Michael and wanted to photograph just the 2 of them together. And for me, I've always gone to him with ideas for shoots that I think would work for preview stories. Probably the most memorable that I had with Michael was I photographed him in the Baltimore aquarium. I tested in the aquarium and I was set to go. And, a whole series of sort of miscues happened for me. Forgot to take the lens that I was going to photograph with. Never a good idea. And then we noticed that all the lights, all the strobes on the inside the aquarium were all being set off. And it turned out that they had a rather large turtle new to the tank who kind of like nibbling on the cables. So it was shorting out my lights. So we had to panic, get that organized. Michael Phelps shows up. I had asked all his people about bringing goggles and bits and pieces to use. He forgets everything. So we had to scramble again. And then, I'd drawn out some sort of sketch for Michael to show him what I was thinking of. Michael's underwater, but he just wouldn't keep still. He really wouldn't keep still. And in the end, I shout up to my assistant. I say, what's going on? There's a long silence. The assistant shouts back to me, Phelps needs a piss. Lucky enough, the person who was making sure we didn't kill all the fish who was near me said, don't worry about it. He can take a leak in the tank, and he did. But now the bloody fish didn't want to come back in the frame. So we had to feed them and get them organized around him. So it was definitely traumatic for me.